SAO is one of those anime that consistently gets brought up every now and then, and it's never in a good light. In fact, it might be the single most hated anime in the community. Whether it's to bash it for its lackluster characters, or its infamous second half, the show just can't seem to catch a break when it comes to criticism. But was it really as bad as so many people seem to remember? Could a show that was once not only genre-defining, but industry-defining, have been so initially overrated that the only conversation left around it is from people that think it's the most garbage anime to have ever been made? Although SAO is by no means perfect, the hate it gets is blown way out of proportion. Does it deserve GOAT status? Hell no. High tier? Not even close. But somewhere deep. I mean really deep. There's some redeeming factors. First, let's understand the criticisms the show has as a whole. The first and main complaint that comes to mind is the genericness the show suffers from. Remember a time when SAO was cool? Was the mob mentality hating on it so overwhelming that the concept isn't cool anymore? Frankly, isekais weren't that big back in 2012, at least compared to now, where every high schooler is being summoned into another world, reincarnated as a hero, a beast tamer, a demon lord. Really? I don't know where people disconnected, but at the time this idea was somewhat fresh. With full dive gear and the ability to link start, diving into a virtual game, that seemed cool to me. Trapped in a death game and forced to clear it is also interesting in itself. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but that's rather compelling in my book. What an interesting cast of characters. A harem, wow. The wide majority can agree on one thing. Most of these characters, who are they again? Is everyone an add-on to the Oblivious Boys harem, or so unimportant that they fade out of existence? Yeah, basically. No one is really fleshed out as much as Asuna and Kirito, that's for sure. I mean, the only redeeming characters in this lineup is this pair. The romance and the relationship between the two on its own is interesting enough to keep you watching. Asuna's longing for a normal life, and Kirito's motivation to give her that opportunity really serves as a lifeline for this godforsaken cast, and it's enough for me. I get it, you wanted to see 100 unique floors. I did too, but that's asking for a little too much, and there was no way we were gonna get that. And maybe a bit too many time skips. But even if you ignore that obvious fault, the pacing of the show feels weak. I mean, just listen to what my friend has to say about it.
Garbage. The murder in the safe zone arc makes you wish I was killed by the laughing coffin, man. SAO takes place over 2 years, and we see like a week of actual days. We literally see 3 out of 75 bosses in the entire anime. The anime is about clearing the floors, and we never see them do it. Don't even get me started on Yui, man. Every scene she's in makes me want to fry my brain.
Yeah, I'm also not a fan of Yui. I think the major problem with these arcs is that in the grand scale of things, like completing the game, it felt so minuscule it seemed irrelevant. It never introduced characters that advanced the plot. I can't even remember the names of the characters, and neither can you. Let's be realistic about the time skips. If they did show us 100 floors, it would be so repetitive and would feel incredibly dragged out. Imagine watching a show where they are clearing 9 floors per episode. The floors would be so quickly glossed over that none of them would feel unique. It would almost be the same as skipping floors like we already did. From this, I can understand why we need some of these arcs that don't feel as dire as the main objective. It was essential in exploring its universe, which was one of the few things SAO had. Sword Art really tried to expand the outer space of this world, like when it came to the divide between the players and beta testers, conflicts between guilds, or subplots like the Ragu Rabbit or King of the Lake. You can't convince me that you wouldn't want to try S-rank food. When it comes to motivations, SAO is kind of a mixed bag. None of the characters in the first part show much interest in wanting to finish the game and are hollow with no drive. All we really have are add-ons to the harem, stepping stones for the plot, or people who are literally just living naturally. There might be some redeeming ones, like Sachi, who is plain innocence and wanting to live, and being terrified of death, and Asuna's encouragement to go back to her normal life and experience the real world. But who cares about that? We only care about the main character, right? Well, Kirito's motivation is actually pretty lousy at the beginning of the show, being that it isn't very clear from the beginning. The anime seems much more interested in painting Kirito as the super cool, secretly OP badass to the viewer. Although this does change a bit as he meets new people. His motivations begin to shift from unclear to wanting to beat the game for a life with Asuna. Now in terms of the villains, yeah, can't defend them. They suck. Kaiba is so mysterious and cool, sure. The Twisted Heathcliff is actually Kaiba, yeah, I guess it works. But seriously, he doesn't have any reason at all. This hurts Kaiba a bit as a villain, but it doesn't really matter why the creator of SAO made the game. What shaped the story was ultimately the characters having to overcome an obstacle and the lives that they had within the game. Maybe if Kaiba had a more obvious motivation, the original conflicts of this show would have had a more interesting climax, but I guess that really wasn't its purpose. And yes, I hate to say it, but Sugo, the main villain of the second part of SAO, is a better villain than Kaiba, simply because of having motivations. You actually hate the guy and consistently dislike him. Speaking of which, I gotta talk about the main trigger word that makes SAO loyalists and haters both shiver at the thought of. Yep, it's Alfheim. I know everyone was waiting in anticipation for me to try to defend this monstrosity, but to be completely honest, it's nowhere even remotely close to as bad as people make it out to be. Maybe it's not as exciting or epic as Kirito trying to conquer a flying castle to save thousands of people's lives, but it sure as hell ain't boring. It even has some pretty cool fight choreography, like when Kirito defeats the General of the Salamanders by dual wielding, or maybe the fight where he brings out the illusion of Gleam Eyes. Kinda clever. Also, this arc doesn't even attempt to fill time. All that Kirito focuses on during this arc are events relevant to the buildup of Kirito defeating the World Tree to save Asuna. Your mind isn't subjected to the brain-numbing experience of having to sit through something that isn't really relevant to the plot like that stupid murder arc. And in all, a lot of the hate directed towards this part comes from the fact that it includes hot topics, not that it's necessarily the worst thing to ever exist. Something SAO does really well is its music and animation. The music in SAO is actually fucking good. Crossing Field is literally a banger. Can Lisa make a bad song? Like, come on, genuinely. The show's OST is also no exception to the standard. There are countless times where it enhances key moments and plot points of the anime, and really complements the show's most emotional moments, while simultaneously enriching the wholesomeness of the chemistry building scenes with Asuna and Kirito. Without music, SAO would lack a lot of the personality and tenderness it thrives in, and would lead to some parts of the show being much less interesting compared to the main events of the plot. SAO is by no means a masterpiece. The show gets a lot of criticism thrown its way, and most of it is very fair, but the constant shitting on it like it's an unwatchable dumpster fire goes a little too far. Sure, it might seem generic if we're considering how much the isekai genre has evolved in the last decade, but people really fail to appreciate the massive influence it had on developing the genre as a whole. Though it has many shortcomings as an anime, and is overshadowed by its status in the community, it has strengths like its intriguing concept, great fight choreography, and beautiful music. While SAO is not the best, it certainly has its moments. The reputation it gained has established it as one of the worst anime, but in truth it's really not that bad. Still better than isekai with smartphone though.